It wasn't an algorithm. You need to understand that first. The images and sounds you were shown, the cryptic numbers that appeared in your recommendations, that was a signal, a tuning fork resonating with something already inside of you. You were chosen because you are one of the few who senses that the reality we see is just a fraction of the whole story, a beautiful, hypnotic, but fragmented echo. For months, you've been collecting those echoes, feeling their power without understanding the source. Consider this video the first translation of that source. This is not another theory or a guess. This is the blueprint, the very architecture of the philosophy you've been subconsciously drawn to. What you are about to see is the key that elevates you from a mere spectator of the mystery to an active participant in its unfolding. The puzzle pieces are in your hands. Now, let's begin to assemble them.
There are territories you have never walked through, vast and uncharted interiors. Yet they inhabit the shifting lattice of your consciousness as if they were carved into its very architecture from the moment of your birth. To call them memories would be a mistake, for they do not refer to a single event that has ever occurred in the timeline of your life. Nor are they dreams, those fragile wisps that dissolve the moment you open your eyes to the morning light. No, these places are something else entirely. They are more stable than the fleeting present, quieter than the noise of memory, and arguably more real than what we clumsily call experience. We label them places simply out of linguistic convenience, grasping for a noun that might contain them, but in truth, they possess no topography that can be mapped. They fold in upon themselves. They knot into impossible shapes. They project themselves onto surfaces that do not technically exist. And yet, you move through them daily, even now, without realizing it. It is a mute geography, a realm without borders or measurable distances. Yet, it is undeniably traversed by emotional gradients and invisible symmetries that refuse to obey Euclidean logic. This is where topographic memory unfolds. It does not manifest as a dusty collection of static images in an album, but rather as the spatial language of thought itself, the hidden arrangement of mental spaces you never built, yet instantly recognize as your own. There is no need to have encountered them physically to call them familiar. It is not about visual recognition. It is about a deep, resonant knowing of where you are, a sense of location that precedes even the knowledge of who you are. Within this internal structure, every concept commands a location, and every sensation inhabits a room. Wooden staircases groan under the weight of ancient emotions. Dusty attics shelter the remnants of undeveloped ideas, and internal gardens bloom with forgotten intuitions. These are not mere metaphors, but evidence that thought unfolds in space rather than time. The mind is less a machine than a sprawling edifice under constant renovation, where some doors remain sealed for decades, while others open onto fully furnished chambers. And you move inside this planless structure, following paths you never drew, your choices and omissions often guided solely by your mental position. Each thought is born of a specific space, and that space shapes the nature of the thought. The ancient Greeks intuited this influence with the concept of Chora, a receptive matrix, a place that is not truly a place, where forms come into being before they are ever named. In this implicit logic, knowledge does not simply develop or accumulate. It arranges itself. It is not acquired like a commodity, but oriented like a compass needle. What you truly know isn't what you can explain in words, but what you move toward effortlessly. It is a tacit competence, a spatial knowing that predates language and stubbornly resists its rigid categories. There is no symbol here, but position. No concept, but configuration. Truth in these territories is not what is said, but where it is said. Every sentence has its place, every silence its own center. And if all this feels strangely familiar yet difficult to understand, let us venture a more modern, pop-cultural reference. You know Vaporwave, don't you? That aesthetic suspended somewhere between synthetic melancholy and ironic plasticity, made of still palm trees, empty malls, infinite loops, and magenta sunsets that seem to last forever. That's it. Vaporwave works not because it represents anything real, but because it evokes spaces you've already inhabited with your imagination. Abstract spaces, yes, but emotionally precise. Environments you've never been to, but in which you move as if you'd left something behind. And it functions not by representing reality, but by activating an algorithm of implicit memory, a generator of internal landscapes. When you are moved by the geometry of an abandoned business park or a late 80s swimming pool, it is not nostalgia. It is because the external image coincides perfectly with the pre-existing topology of the felt. In this light, even recurring dream spaces aren't nighttime inventions, but persistent mental environments that emerge more clearly when wakefulness loosens its grip. There, configurations appear that follow not realism, but symbolic coherence. Buildings that twist upon themselves, staircases that lead skyward, hanging gardens on hexagonal platforms. Everything makes sense, yet holds no literal meaning. These are logics meant to be experienced, not translated into words. These spaces do exist, just not in the external world. They exist as cognitive structures, as active regions of the mind that hold not information, but direction. Not memories, but access conditions. When you enter one of them, you don't retrieve something, you relocate. It's as if consciousness itself were a city, and thought a wandering through its districts. Some well-known, others inaccessible, still others that emerge only at certain hours of the day, like dreams that only come at dawn. Some have tried to map them, of course, from the elaborate memory theaters of the Renaissance to the modular archives in cognitive psychology, from ancient mnemonic chambers to immersive VR environments. But every map is also a lie, because every representation distorts. The truth of these spaces lies not in their static form, but in their tension. They are unstable, inward-facing, sometimes deeply dangerous. And yet, they are essential, because it is there, in those shadows, that what you are begins to take shape, before you even notice the change. There are no universal keys for these rooms, but every so often, in the middle of a sentence or at the ragged edge of a thought, a door creaks open. And then, something happens that you cannot explain, but can only follow. A sense of orientation with no compass, an urge to move toward a zone you cannot name, but know exists. When it happens, do not ask questions. Follow the trajectory, and watch, with breath held tight, what stirs within you. See you in the next episode.